Hi, welcome to another edition of Capital Area Chats. I'm your host, Paul Brogan, and we're about all things in the greater Concord area. The people, places, and things that make this a great area to live, to work, and to play. Today, we have a very fun show in store for you. My guest is Jim Weber. Jim Weber is a legend locally and probably, in other areas too. But Jim works here at ConcordTV. And Jim is also the brainchild behind an upcoming event, and it is an event that will be held at the Concord City Auditorium on Wednesday, September 21st. The beginning of the Walker Lecture Series and a film tribute to the history of the Concord community players, or the community players of Concord. I knew them as one when I was younger, and now they're known as another. But anyway, Jim is with me today to talk about that evening, and I want to welcome you once again to Capital Area Chats.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. This has been an amazing project, and to be with you on the show is terrific as well, because we're very excited about it here at Concord TV, and we want to kind of share the news with the community because we have a few events coming up that I think people will be interested in, whether they're actors or whether they go to the theater or whether they just like Concord city history. I think it feeds into all of those, so that's part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. And when did you first begin to think about doing something like this?
A little over a year ago, we came up with the idea of doing a brief documentary about the history of the community players, because they've retained this amazing collection of archives, photographs, programs, posters, things like that, going back to 1927 when they started. So we thought, let's try to make a project at Concord TV. Maybe we can get a grant. And we actually approached New Hampshire Humanities, and they agreed with us, and we got a grant to do this at Concord TV. I think we used our grant money up really fast, if I'm not mistaken, because we put in a whole year of work on this, and it went from being probably like a 20-minute or a 35-minute movie to now it's a full-length documentary. It is really, probably will be an 80 to 85-minute feature. It's still in cutting at the moment. It's almost finished, and it looks incredible, and we'll talk more about that later. So, yeah.
And you've been a part of the community play. Well, you first started going in around 1970. You first began to go to their productions, but you joined in the late 70s?
Yes, my first show, I was a member of the community players. I joined in 1977. I was in the chorus of Guys and Dolls. I played Nick the Greek. So a character we will not remember, I'm sure, but I was in the background, and I had stubble painted on my face and whatever. I must have been, 22 or something at the time. But it was a blast. I had a great time, and from there I did cabaret, and then I did a show called No No Nanette, which I think we may see you in the next picture. Oh, there we are on the screen.
Wow, too many rings around Rosie.
Yeah, too many rings around here. I'm standing in the back on the left. You can see I have a mustache like Gene Shalit there.
Yes, yes.
And Paul, you're peeking out on the right, just behind the boy who's on the front on the right. You're the second one behind him.
All right.
Yeah. And there we have Dee Dee Flanders in the middle in red. So,
yes,
yeah,
that was
as
1980.
1980, exactly.
Yes.
We had to tap dance, sing, and play the ukulele. I know. Not all at the same time,
no,
luckily.
Except, the ukulele and singing at the same time.
That's
and then we put our ukes down and launched into I Want to Be Happy.
That's correct.
So
that was when I first got into the players, and I was around for 5 or 6 years, and then I moved to California for 20 years, but I was involved with the players on and off during that period. I still did some set designs for them. I would mail them and fax them material.
You did Little Shop, didn't you?
I did Little Shop of Horrors. I came back to visit, and I stayed for a number of weeks. I missed the LA riots completely. I was here, so in '92. So anyway, but
you have directed some brilliant productions. You've designed sets, and as I had mentioned to you in an email, your Philadelphia story just took the audience applause when the curtain opened on that was stunning. But I mean, you've worked behind the scenes, you promote, you design, you are passionate about theater.
I've mostly been a designer, and I've directed maybe a handful of shows. which I enjoyed. The last one, I think I co-directed Something's Afoot a few years ago, right before the pandemic. And now I'm kind of gearing into things I can do from home, you know. So, but I'm helping with publicity and things like that.
Great,
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful.
But this project started about a year ago, and it sort of expanded as we went on and on, you know, studying the history of the community players. Bob Stewart was the historian with Phyllis, his wife, for over 35 years. And he would, there's Bob on the left up there, and you can see some major figures from the 1950s, director and actress Ruth Osborne, and also Harriet Strong on the right. But Bob Stewart was really, I guess if anyone's the major player, it was Bob. And he joined around 1948. They had already been going for 20 years, but he stayed with it right up to the end, up to, like, you know, 2010 or 20, you know, it was amazing. And he worked on over 140 shows, which was incredible.
And that's not even counting all the productions he did at Brady, because he single-handedly created a theater company at Bishop Brady High School that was second to none, certainly locally.
And it brought a lot of those people into the community players, from doing shows up there. So that was kind of amazing.
Wow.
But it's been quite an experience to look back on the history of the group that started in 27. It really was a group of people who were like doctors and lawyers and were fairly educated, but they kind of wanted to have some fun. They weren't out to do some big thing. And they started in 27 with a show called The Mollusk, which was a comedy with 4 people in it. Harold Cheney, who was a major player's name, and Betty Lee Bogue's mother was in it. Her name was Ruth Holmgren, and she was one of the people in that show as well. But after like 4 or 5 years, they kind of were losing their footing. They weren't really sure what to do. So they hired a professional coach in 1932 for the cost of $75, which then was like $1,500, you know? And she was the wife of the rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church. And here's her picture right here. You'll see her coming up on the screen. There she is. Her name was Viroqua Sheldon Lovegren. And she only was with the players up to 1945. But during that period, she directed 26 shows. She gave private lessons. People went to her for speech lessons. Harriet Strong was a school teacher right here at Concord High, and she had trouble reaching her students, you know, communicating with them and getting their attention. Imagine that, even then. But Viroqua Lovegren really showed her how to speak to a class and how to present herself so the students would pay attention. And not only that, how to succeed as an actress on the stage. So she gave private lessons to many of these people, some of whom were, you know, local figures or politicians or whatever. And, you know, in addition to being a really hard-nosed theater director, she made them show up at the Audi at 7 in the morning on a Saturday and work them till late at night. They would rehearse during the week at the West Street Ward House, which had no heat. They had to bring their own wood to the ward house and start fires so to get warm while they were there, you know. And they're doing, you know, Noel Coward living room comedies dressed in ski clothes to stay warm, you know. So this was part of their legend, and it's all in the movie. You'll see. So it's kind of interesting looking back at all of that.
That is amazing. Did you get a very good response when you reached out to people to share their own experiences or stories?
I did, and it's almost like it's a project I wish that we had done 15, 20 years earlier, if such a thing were possible, because you lose people as time goes by, you know. So I was able to reach people who, here we have a picture on the screen of 1934. On the first row, the third woman over is Harriet Strong. It's her first show, and she was the teacher at Concord High. On the top row, the third man from the left is Dick Bailey, and he worked with the players for many years.
I remember him.
Was a great voice, great singer. He worked at Nuttig's music store downtown, I heard. Anyway. So yes, I did reach out, but people really their memories only went back to the late 50s, early 60s at the most. And I had people who, as children, had been in shows that Harriet Strong directed.
Yes.
You yourself are in the documentary, if I must say, and you share a memory of director Ruth Osborne, who no one has any memories of, really.
Yes.
Your mom knew her, of course, socially
Yes.
and with the players. But people like that, it was great to be able to at least touch people who knew those people who were very big in the 40s, and certainly Ruth Osborne goes back to the 30s, as did Harriet. You know, so it was very hard to make those connections, but it was interesting to do that. I wish we had been able to film this while Bob Stewart was alive, you know,
exactly.
because Bob was a major historian and he
remembered
everything. On the back of photographs, I'd turn over a picture of the cast and it would say, so all the names of the people in order that you see them, and then so-and-so is replacing someone else who was out sick with a cold, you know. So he would that kind of information is invaluable.
Oh,
you know,
his
it's really
attention to
fascinating.
detail was second to none.
Yes.
He truly
and
was.
he loved it. I think he really, you know, this poor Stewart boys grew up with giant file cabinets in their kitchen, you know, whatever, on Eastern Street in East Concord, you know. But he loved keeping tabs on all of that stuff.
Yes, he did.
So, yeah.
Really. And he stayed in touch with his actors years later, too.
Yes,
They would,
he did, and was friends with them and would visit, you know, people who had stopped performing or stopped being active. He was socially in touch with them all the time.
Yes.
He and Harriet were, you know, just remarkable
Truly
together.
remarkable.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So, here we have, that's Dick Bailey. That's Dick Bailey in World War II, and his wife Anna, and I think one of his sons is also called Dick Bailey too. There are some relatives of his in town. I'm going to try to get a hold of them and hope they come to see it. What the players did during World War II, during Christmas in 1944, they made these little booklets of snapshots, and this is one of them. And they sent these booklets overseas with handwritten notes about the pictures. Many of the notes were humorous or whatever. And, you know, Mrs. Lovegren and her husband, and Ozzie and Harriet Strong on a bicycle built for two in their backyard. This whole little booklet of pictures. And Dick Bailey wrote back a thank you note in the form of a poem that rhymes, detailing all the elements that were in this little booklet. So it's fascinating. And as I was doing research, I found the books first, and I didn't know what they were, so I kind of just kept going. And later on, I found the poem, and I had forgotten about the books. I was so deep into it. And I said, wouldn't it be great to find the picture books? And then I did. Wow. And I thought, wow. So in the documentary, we have both of them. We have the poem that Dick Bailey wrote from overseas in his handwriting in 1944. And we have the little booklet that was sent to him, you know, that his wife did was written by hand. It was really sweet.
How wonderful.
Really sweet.
How these stories, the backstories are what really make it especially fascinating. Because it was more than just a theater company of people who wanted to perform. It became an intricate part not only of the community, but of lives and connections that were made.
And I think as they went along, here we are, we're going fairly chronologically, into the post-war years and in the 50s, the men that came back from the war really valued an organization like the Players because it was about family at the time and very much they could put effort into working on sets, they could be in plays, their wives and children could be involved, and would often spend full weekends, full days at the auditorium in rehearsal. And it meant a great deal to them to have this sense of home and connection and belonging. And so I think they felt their time was well spent. People had more time. They didn't have all the social media or devices or things. They really had a lot of time to devote to hobbies and community. And the Players was a major organization that was able to use them. Here we have a picture. That's Harriet Strong in playing the lead in I Remember Mama in 1950. Yes. And so even as she got a little older, she was still able to perform, but she was transitioning into directing at this point. And she and her husband went, this is actually my favorite photograph of a Players show. I think it's just
it's
isn't it beautiful?
It's beautiful. Yeah. That was the first play my parents saw after moving to Concord from Cambridge, Mass. And they went to see that and were just so impressed that a community theater group, because they, coming from the Boston area, had no idea what they were going to see. And they were just amazed by the professionalism and the
And
polish.
I think that's something that Mrs. Lovegren really brought to the group in the 30s, because when she came in, they were kind of loose ragtag, and she kind of raised the bar up high, and she said, you know, if you had more attention to detail and spent more time with everything, like the smallest parts in the play and the details of the costumes and the sets and the props. I mean, she would send to London to get the right newspaper for a set, for, you know, prop for a show. And she would make sure everything was specific. And when you look at the pictures before she came in and after, you see the difference. The time that was spent on costumes and things is amazing. And it really made all the difference. Now look, you see Oklahoma in 1956. This was when the Players jumped into doing musicals. Now I have to say this was in partnership with the Concord Music Club. But look at the detail of the costumes and the lighting and the sets. And this is just, you know, at the auditorium with very simple lighting, but the detail of the work in design is really amazing, you know. So it was a while before the Players jumped into doing musicals. They didn't do them back in the 40s per se, you know. But when they jumped in, they did with both feet. And they were very successful because the whole world at that point was in love with Rodgers and Hammerstein. And they wanted to do it right. And so they did it up big. I mean, in Oklahoma, there were 50 people on stage. And not only that, she had a chorus off stage that sang to just beef up the sound. It was like amazing, you know, whatever.
It was the same carousel. They had a working carousel.
Yeah, they had a working carousel. And they looked like they were professional productions. And the city responded to them. They had to add an extra night for Oklahoma. I have photos of people waiting in line on Prince Street, around the corner, you know, to get in. Frank Gardner came in at the right time because he had this wonderful voice. He was a tall, you know, charismatic, and he did the leads in a number of those shows, you know, at that time. So they knew what they were doing, and with the music club, they partnered. The Players could provide the theatrical expertise, while the music club brought in musicians, music directors, choral directors. I think your mother started out as a rehearsal pianist for the woman who was playing the lead in Oklahoma. You know, so they needed that kind of training. And your mother was Juilliard trained pianist, and so they brought in very good people. You know, whatever, as you can tell. So it really, the town really responded to what the Players was doing, you know. And I remember my stepmom, who grew up in Concord in the 50s, she just had this great feeling for the Players, they were called. So that's why we call the documentary The Players. You know, oftentimes people go, oh no, the full name is, you know, XYZ. But the Players is what people knew them as in that affectionate way in their heyday. You know?
Oh, they did. And it was a tradition locally for many years. Thanksgiving weekend, you went to the Players production. And when your friends or family came to visit, you got them tickets and took them, and they came away in awe of the polish and the professionalism that they saw on the stage.
Because they had their dinner, and it was 5 o'clock. They had nothing left to say to them.
Exactly. True.
So they could go down the hill and see the show.
So, because you didn't have the football game watching that you have today.
You didn't have
off you went
12
to the
channels of
Audi
ESPN or Netflix or what have you.
No, it was same in our house, and it was you looked forward to it. It was exciting to know you were going to go see it that night.
It's been quite a process going through all this material. I'm lucky I've had Wally Pino as our project advisor on it.
Great.
And he's been terrific and supportive, and he's in the documentary as well. He as a Players director and an actor and set builder and president and a guide. And Wally really picked up. He was sort of a mid-generation person that picked up everything from Bob Stewart and carried that forward. You know, as we go into the years where the Players were searching for a home. It's hard to believe they never. I mean, really, for 50 years or more, more than that, they never had, almost 70 years, they never had a home of their own. They had a theater they could perform in, which was part of, the Concord City Hall, but a place, they were moving their scenery around, they were moving their costumes around, they were in unheated warehouses, they were next door to the prison in an unlocked warehouse and, with hardly any electricity. It was really, really rough. And so as they got into the 80s and certainly 90s, they really devoted their attention, and this had started many years before, to focusing on raising money to build their own location where they could store their costumes, scenery, and here you go on the screen. You can see Wally is in the center there. I think we have one of the stewards on the left, and Bill Tiffany is on the right. Bill Tiffany is from Ware, and he had a construction firm, and he brought in all his equipment and helped them, they had to clear the land. It was full of trees and everything. The land was given to the players as a gift by Dennis and Elizabeth Hager in the 1980s. And the players, they raised the money to clear the land, put in the, foundation and build it. They didn't have all the money to do this at once, so they had to raise money piece by piece by piece to do this. And it was a project that literally went over like 15 years of the group, all at the same time that they're doing at least 4 shows a year, road shows, workshops, and everything else. So it's really amazing. It really helped bring the group together after some rough times in the 70s to have this goal, that was it was in front of them in the 1980s and 90s. And there you see the Players Studio as it was in 1993. And it was even then a number of more years before they could finish the interior. So it sat there like a shell with a padlock on it, as they were raising money to finish it. But they did, whatever. They took out a mortgage and got the building finished and then paid that off with lots of fundraisers and Irene DeShane shows and things like that.
Exactly.
Big money makers. So, and they were. God bless her.
Oh,
God bless her.
absolutely.
People
Andrea
turned out.
Manis and they were passionate about making sure this came together.
They were, and it really made all the difference. And people that come to Concord and go to the studio, not to brag as a player, but they come in and their minds are blown away by seeing this beautiful facility. It has the largest costume collection in the state, which is amazing.
And Phyllis was the one that really...
And Phyllis brought it together, exactly, yes. And she did that for, decades, absolutely, absolutely decades, from the late 40s, in the 50s, and in addition to costuming shows herself, whatever.
Exactly.
And in the documentary, Betty Lent talks about Phyllis making costumes from scratch for The Mystery of Edwin Drood and things, and doing fittings, of periods where things just don't exist anymore. And she had to make them. And it was just incredible. But I have wonderful stories with Esther Crowley, who worked with her, sewing. And there's just funny things that I'm not going to say a word about. You have to see the documentary.
To the City Auditorium or to Red River 2 weeks later.
Exactly, right. So, no, it's coming together beautifully, and I'm very, very excited. It's been one of the biggest projects of my life. It's taken a whole year to do with ConcordTV, and I must say, our executive director, Josh Hardy, and Mike and Matt and all the studio people have just been so helpful on it and great. We've interviewed 23 players, most of them in this room, and it's been from everyone from age, I don't know what, to age 98. So it's been amazing. Yeah,
it is. It's a great group here. It
Right,
really is. It's
right.
inspiring when you walk through
So we'll take a look at the trailer for the documentary,
Wonderful.
and then we'll be back after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, in a small town called Concord, New Hampshire, a group of grown-ups got together to put on a show. The tickets were 75 cents each, and they gave all the profit to the Red Cross, who needed it badly. But even though they were a group of smart folks off stage, including teachers, doctors, and lawyers, on stage they were struggling to find their way. Until one woman came to town and showed them how. One ambitious production followed another, and no one will forget the night Hollywood's greatest star came to Concord. The 1940s took the players to war and then brought them home, willing to try new things, expand their talent pool, and create a musical partnership in the 50s that took the small city by storm. But awards and mega shows couldn't stave off changing times. The next generation faced difficult decisions as the community players searched for a home. And that's only half their story. Concord TV takes you beyond the footlights and into the story of the community players of Concord, New Hampshire. You'll meet the players of yesterday through rare archival material. Hear the stories of the players today.
I'm really afraid to see it stop.
I'm going to nail them to the floor.
I don't like to talk like that.
And get an exciting look behind the scenes at the players of tomorrow.
This is the best night of my life.
It's the story of a little theater that grew up in hard times, learned from the pros, found a home, and became a vibrant resource for a growing arts community. Concord TV, with support from New Hampshire Humanities, presents The Players, the 95-year history of the community players of Concord, New Hampshire.
We are back. I hope you all enjoyed that trailer as much as I do, no matter how many times I see it. I never get tired of it, and I can't wait to see the entire production. I'm back with Jim Weber, and then there were three. Mike
plants.
from Concord TV is joining us, and he has been an invaluable help to Jim in creating what is going to be, I think, a documentary for the ages that people years from now will be looking back on as showing a piece of life in Concord over the course of 95 years. So, Michael, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You are a joy here at Concord TV, I know, and the interactions that I've had with you over the years, you're great and a professional and so enthused.
But it's been great working with you over the years, too. We've had some great presentations on Concord history
Thank
and
you.
entertainment.
Thank you very much. Now, you and Jim have worked closely on this project, and for you, what is the most challenging part that you found?
Well, you know, I definitely come at this from a different place than both you and Jim in particular. You know, I'm an outsider. Other than going to a few Players productions over the years, you know, I've not been a part of the Players. My acting is limited to being Scrooge's nephew back in middle school. So, you know, I very limited as far as my theater experience. Although I did play in the pit for Hello Dolly, too. I forgot, I told you about that.
You get a credit for that.
Thank you. You know, coming at it from differently, and I know when Jim talking about this, he didn't want it just to be for the players, just, you know, something to say, you know, here, players, celebrate yourself. We really wanted to look at it from a larger picture, and that's part of the fun part of editing is being able to kind of put all these stories together and be able to tell kind of a larger picture of not only Concord history, but then the history of community theater and the changes in community organizations over the years. Everything from, you know, the post-war boom and when these organizations really thrived to, you know, difficulties in the 70s, booms again in the 80s and 90s, and trouble again once the internet became a thing. So it's been very interesting, you know, putting all these snippets of 23 interviews and thousands of pictures and all the other research that had to go in to try and put things together and make a whole story out of it. And it's been a pleasure to work with Jim.
Well, we try to keep organized, but there's just so much in it. I mean, we must have. We probably looked at like 10,000 pieces of memorabilia, photos, programs, whatever. We've digitized about 800. You know, I don't know how many actual photographs would be in the document. I couldn't even guess.
There's hundreds.
There have to be hundreds in
hundreds.
it. Yeah, but the files that we're using, that we selected out of them all,
Yes.
are easily like 1,500 photographs, which is just amazing. And a lot of them we had to clean up, because when you just scan something, there's hairs or it's dark.
Exactly.
Or you've got to make it so it looks okay on the screen. And I do that, and Mike does some of that as well, whatever. But in addition to that, he has the sound, the timing, the music, all these things that have to go together. And it's a lot. And something that Mike brings to it, that he was able to, especially in the early parts of the store, of the years, to find like historical, archival, documentary footage of parades in Concord, things like that, World War II, whatever, to give it some movement and life,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it is a movie,
Yes.
and you can't just be looking at,
Still
it's not just a
pictures.
slideshow,
Exactly.
although,
Exactly.
Ken Burns can do that, but,
Yeah, exactly.
but we're going beyond Ken,
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah, and that is definitely one of the tricky things, because
yeah.
there isn't that video
No.
evidence that where we found some archival material besides pictures, some
Right.
snippets of audio and some snippets of things here and
yeah,
there. But yeah, trying to put together a story for the first 40 years where we don't really have anybody who was around
Right.
Yes.
to
Exactly.
talk to what that was like. So that was definitely a challenge, but it's been a really interesting one, and it's.
Right.
I love history. I was a history major before I switched to computer science, and still is a passion of mine. So it's been
We were
fun.
even, and Mike made these work perfectly. We found some audio tapes that were recorded in 1977 with Harriet Strong talking about working in the 1930s with Mrs. Lovegren. They talk about the night in 1942 when Betty Davis came to see a play at the Community Players, and it was a benefit for the Red Cross, and she came up and talked to the audience during intermission and signed autographs, and Harriet talks about this on the audio tape, and it's in the movie. It's great,
Oh,
it's
that's so
great.
wonderful
So
to be
you're
able to
really
have
touching
that.
a moment in history, going back.
Wow,
So
that's impressive.
It's pretty neat.
That, that really
it
is.
Right.
Now, the background music in that, where did you find that? Because it works so perfectly in the trailer.
Well, Jim does the heavy lifting on that. I just time it and make sure that the dynamics are right. And, occasionally, I think I threw a song or two in. But,
Yes,
But we
yeah.
work with licensing. My real I shouldn't say my real job. This has been a real
Yeah,
job. But my day job is at ConcordTV. So we do a lot of work for nonprofits for the city of Concord. So because we do so many other productions to support other organizations, we have a music licensing agreement. So we've got a vast agreement to a library of music that helps us not only enliven some of the videos that we do, say, something about paying your bills with the city of Concord,
Exactly.
but we can also make a documentary a lot
so
more
we
lively.
pay for the service, but it has thousands and thousands of choices, and they're beautifully done and beautifully recorded. Some of them by major film composers and things like that. So they're really quite nice. I was surprised to. I found so many nice choices. So, although I never met a bossa nova I didn't like, we had to move out of the '60s. quickly.
There's a few bossa novas. There's a few bossa novas. They work. They work
My
though.
era. The cha-cha,
That's great.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. So it does. It recreates the era. It brings back the time. It
really
so
does.
It's fun.
Wonderful.
We have a smoking montage of like photographs of people smoking. 'Cause
Really?
there were so many. If you had a rehearsal picture,
Oh, yes.
inevitably people were smoking in the theater.
Oh, yes.
At rehearsal.
Yes.
And
Oh,
it was
absolutely.
Like, it was a different time.
And if it was a large cast, I can remember walking in on rehearsals for larger musicals like The King and
Yes,
I,
yep.
and the cigarette smoke down there was just
wafting to the air.
throughout,
Yes.
rising to
Right.
the top. There was a
Right.
haze
Right.
over the whole thing.
Yeah, we
but
have
it
little
was the
children
time.
running around. And
Exactly, inhaling it all. Yes, yes. But it was a totally different,
Yes,
different
it was a
era,
different era,
and
completely. Yeah.
people did. How close are you to having it completed now? As we're taping this, we're about 4 weeks away from
Right.
the opening night.
Well, I would say, I mean, we're in post-production in that sense, and the editing is done, really. It's really fine-tuning, and I'm going away on vacation next week, and I will leave Mike alone, and I will not
I've
be-
got his
Yeah,
long
right.
list of
have
notes.
that, yes.
Yeah.
So the two of us, we're Irish nitpickers from way back, so we're both like that. So, but I've got notes and notes and notes, but luckily I'll be away, so hopefully I...
And then you'll come back and look at it with a fresh
With a fresh eye,
perspective,
hopefully,
and and
And a gag
then
around my
it'll
mouth.
be
No,
this,
anyway,
and then it'll be that last.
But yeah,
sprint
you
to
know,
the-
it's funny. You look at these movies where these producers, nitpick things in the studio control room, and you kind of get into it as it
Yes.
goes along. You really, really do. And but it's a fun process. It really is. It's very exciting. Very exciting.
Now, on September 21st, where will you be at the City Auditorium? Standing in the back, or will you sit down?
Well, I think I'll be sitting down watching the documentary.
Okay.
And after it's over, first of all, we thank the Walker Lecture Series so much. We were selected to be their first show of the season, and they'd never seen a foot of it,
No.
and they said, we would love to have you. As long as we're doing the first showing, great, we'd love to have you.
That's an
and
honor.
so we're thrilled. The trustees have been so supportive of us, as they have been of Concord TV over the years, which is great. We love partnering.
They are great friends
We
of ours,
love
too.
partnering with them,
Yes.
yeah. So we're thrilled to be there. And we'll show the documentary. There'll be an intermission. You can buy cookies and make donations to the Friends. We thank the Friends of the Audi. They do amazing work. And then after the movie, there will be a talk back with the filmmakers from Concord TV and some members of the community players as well.
Great. Wonderful.
It won't be too long. We have a special guest that evening who will be players director Clara Brogan, who recently turned 98 years old, and she will be joining us in the theater
Wow.
that evening. So
Ooh.
we're so excited to have her.
Oh, I can't wait to see her.
There you go. Yes. So there you go. Oh, there she is on screen. There's Clara and with another
Sharon.
director, Sharon Paquette.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
there they are, the day they came here to tape. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, anyway.
Mike, you will be coming that night.
I am.
Are you
yep.
going to be one of the people on stage?
I
afterwards?
believe Jim has asked me to
Great.
be up
There
there.
you go.
So
Absolutely.
I can tell people how to manipulate things
Yeah.
in Adobe Premiere.
I think there'll
What if
be.
the projector jams?
That's
or
true.
something? Mike will be there. So,
I think there'll be an hour of
Right,
questions
yeah.
after, though, because
Oh,
I think people are going to be stunned into, wanting to know more.
Well, it's an
about
exciting night. It's an exciting night. And you have little pins here.
Yes.
I have Baruchwa,
Yes.
and you have
I have
Harriet.
Harriet.
It says, I'm
Yes.
a player. And I hope I want to bring the focus back a little bit to the amazing women, like your mother, who did incredible work with the community players and need to be remembered. We have the Aussie Strong Award.
Yes.
Harriet did equally as much, and I think
She
she
did.
if not more, and she
She
needs to
did.
be recognized.
Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
think a part of the documentary's work is that as well. 2 weeks after Walker Lecture, it will be shown for one night at Red River on Thursday, October 6th. And that's a paid event, and it's going to be a benefit for the community players. It's their 95th season.
Yes.
And so they're excited to have the documentary kind of as a launching pad in a way, as they inch into their 100th year coming up,
Yes.
So that's amazing. They are one of the oldest community theater organizations in New England.
And they're doing Murder on the Orient Express in November?
They're doing Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express in November.
Yes.
And in October, they're doing The Wind in the Willows, the Children's Theater, a musical version written by the author of Downton Abbey. Julian Fellows wrote it.
Really?
Yes, exactly. So that's exciting. Coming up October 14th and 15th. And then later on in February, they're doing The 39 Steps, directed by Kevin Gardner. Amazing.
Oh, he's
Yep,
back.
he's back.
What a great
Yep. And then
thrill.
Wally Pino will be directing an original play that he wrote about the Hollywood in the 20s, before the movies learned to talk. It's called Without a Word. And it's very, very funny. It's about all these crazy people who came to Hollywood to try to get into the film business, and will they suppress their egos enough to make a good project? So,
Oh, what a
anyway,
great season.
there you go.
What a nice,
It's a good
diverse.
season. It's a good season, yeah.
Yes,
It's a
and
good
you have
season.
some really wonderful directors
We do.
who
We do.
haven't directed in a
In a
while,
while.
too.
Yep, yep.
so
Betty
that's
Lent is doing Murder on the Orient Express.
Great.
And that's going to be exciting because it's going to use projections as well as scenery, and it'll be quite different. It'll be quite
Ah,
interesting.
wonderful.
So, yeah.
Are you doing anything with the season?
Well, that remains to be
Okay.
seen. You'll have to open your
right.
program.
Oh.
I'd say a documentary about them
quite
is
enough,
not quite a bit.
Exactly.
So no, this has been thrilled to do, and if it's helpful to the organization, and but really, it's a part of the community's history.
Oh, it is.
You know,
Absolutely.
It really,
Yes.
it really, really is.
Yes.
It's just when I talk to I'm meeting people on Facebook going, actually, these historical pages, I go, may I borrow that photograph for the documentary? And I give it to Mike, and it's in the film, you know. But it's great to meet them because they know Harriet Strong. They know, you know, Ruth Osborne. They know these because they lived all through, you know, people like, you know, Jim Peel or whatever. Anyway, Dick Peel.
Yes, Dick Peel.
And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Pingree, Tom Pingree was a director, and his nephew was my teacher here at Concord High. So it all really interconnects.
It does.
You know?
It all interconnects.
It does.
The members of the Players were, I mean, Ira Shanahoff worked at
Yes.
the jewelry store,
That's
and
right.
everybody knew him from there. And then they saw him on stage, and he
Yes.
was always trumpeting the Players productions at the store, and it was a real feel for the community and a real
it's true.
asset in
It's true.
Concord, as much as any organization, you know, certainly equal to all of the other.
And I have to shout out to the Children's Theater Project because this is their 27th season. And they've done, Karen Braz and Barb Woodman done amazing, amazing work. And that has raised a new generation of kids that grow up, and they remember being, and that's part of the Players as well.
It is.
And they come to Concord High, which now does amazing theater here with Clint Close. And then many of them go on to back to the Players as young adults and continue on. So it's really this progression in the community that's great to see. And I want to just shout out to them as well. So.
That's wonderful.
That's it. Thank you so much for having us.
No, this is a
thank you, Paul.
treat
Yeah.
for me. And of course, you know, anything that celebrates theater and gets people to stop for a moment and recognize the history that's associated with our community.
And they gave there's a reason a group existed that long. And I think that is the question of the documentary, like what is the purpose of it? It's really to show why and how they lasted as long as they have, you know? Because people like Mrs. Lovegren and Harriet and Bob and your mom, you know, whatever, really raised the bar, and they had very high standards.
Yes, they really did.
And you know, people that try to maintain them today, we salute them. So there you go.
Well, you, as much as anyone else, not just for the documentary, but for the productions you've been involved with too, you have raised the bar, and you've made sure that, I mean, Boeing, and so many others, your set designs are imaginative and alive and make today's audiences feel a connection with what they're watching on the stage too.
It's been
so
fun. It's been
it's really, you know, special and remarkable. So. Well, Mike and Jim, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to see you on September 21st at the Concord City Auditorium. Is that
be there.
7:30?
It's 7:30.
Okay.
Right.
And it is free, so it's first come, first serve.
Right. Bring money for cookies.
Yes, lots of money for cookies. They have a great selection.
Right.
And you'll see Jim there, you'll see Mike there, you'll see me there, and you'll see all kinds of wonderful people.
That's right.
But and you're going to love it so much, you're going to want to go 2 weeks and a day later to Red River and see it again, and help to benefit the organization that you have just found out their entire story.
And if I may say one thing, who knows, it may turn up on Concord TV as well.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again,
There you go.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Right.
And thank all of you out there. And thank you, Matt, behind the scenes. And thank you, Concord TV.
Yes.
This is your host, Paul Brogan, telling you I'll be back again soon with another edition of Capital Area Chats. Thank you.